To understand how I ended up standing behind a restaurant curtain listening to my own downfall, you need to understand my family. My name is Clara. For as long as I can remember, I was the reliable one, which in my mother's dictionary meant the one who paid the bills, fixed the problems, and kept her mouth shut. When my father passed away 10 years ago, he left our family home and a modest life insurance policy. My mother, Linda, spent her half within 2 years on failed business ventures and endless vacations. My stepbrother, Mason, Linda's son, from her second marriage was her absolute golden child. Mason couldn't keep a job for more than 3 months, got kicked out of 2 colleges, and somehow every single failure was always somebody else's fault. And then there was my husband, Julian. When I met Julian, he was charming, ambitious, and seemingly supportive. But after we got married, his true colors started leaking through the seams. He worked in middle management at a corporate firm, but he had million-dollar tastes on an entry-level budget. 3 years ago, my mother was facing foreclosure on the family house. Mason was living in her basement, pulling in 0 income. I couldn't watch my father's house get auctioned off on the courthouse steps, so I stepped in. I took out a massive refinancing loan under my name. I paid off the back taxes, cleared the mortgage arrears, and covered the renovations. I poured over $80,000 of my own hard-earned savings into that property to save my mother from living on the street. Julian hated it at first, but then my mother made him a promise behind my back. Keep Clara in line, and when the property value peaks, we'll sell it and split the profit between you and Mason. I didn't know that at the time. I thought I was being a good daughter. I thought Julian was being a supportive husband. I thought we were a family. Instead, I was just a walking bank account with a target on my back. Over the next 2 years, the dynamic in my house became unbearable. My mother moved into my dad's old master suite. Mason moved into the guest room, bringing his noisy friends, leaving trash everywhere, and treating me like a maid in my own home. Julian stopped contributing to our joint expenses entirely, claiming he was investing his money into future opportunities. Whenever I raised my voice, whenever I asked for respect or help with the mortgage payments I was carrying completely alone, the 3 of them would gang up on me. "Don't be so dramatic, Clara," my mother would say, rolling her eyes over breakfast. "Mason is going through a tough time. You're his sister. You should support him." "You're acting unhinged, Clara," Julian would add, putting his arm around my mother. "Your mom has had a hard life. Why do you always have to make everything about money?" They gaslit me every single day. They made me feel like I was crazy for expecting basic human decency. 2 months before my 27th birthday, my mother approached me with a proposal. She claimed she wanted to restructure the house deed so we could save on property taxes. She handed me a stack of legal documents wrapped in sticky notes, telling me to sign near the red tabs. When I told her I wanted my lawyer to look over the paperwork first, the mood in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Your lawyer?" my mother snapped. "You don't trust your own family? After everything I did to raise you?" Julian came up behind me, squeezing my shoulders a little too tightly. "Clara, babe, don't be paranoid. It's just standard paperwork. Why are you creating drama out of nowhere?" I didn't sign it that day. I put the papers in my leather briefcase, locked it, and went to work. But I could feel the clock ticking. They were getting desperate. Mason had accumulated huge personal debts, Julian was falling behind on his luxury car payments, and the property value of our house had just skyrocketed due to a new commercial development down the road. They didn't just want the house, they needed it, and I was standing in the way of their payday. That brings us back to my birthday dinner. Julian had insisted on booking the table. He bought me a dress, told me how beautiful I looked, and said tonight was all about putting the past behind us and starting fresh. I wanted so badly to believe him. I wanted so badly to have a normal family. So when I walked out to the restroom mid-meal, I actually had tears of gratitude in my eyes. I thought, maybe things are finally changing. Then I overheard them. "Change the locks before she gets home tonight. We sign the deed transfer tomorrow morning." Standing behind that velvet curtain, listening to Julian laugh with my mother, my brain went hyper-focused. The emotional fog cleared instantly. The sadness vanished, replaced by an icy, absolute clarity. They had taken my briefcase while I was in the shower earlier that evening. They thought they had found the signed property agreement. They thought Mason's shady notary friend was going to file the transfer paperwork at the county office first thing in the morning, stripping my name off the title and leaving me locked out in the cold on my own birthday. I stepped back, wiped my eyes, took a deep breath, and walked back to the table with a bright, fake smile on my face. "Everything okay, birthday girl?" Julian asked, kissing my cheek. His breath smelled like expensive wine paid for with my credit card. "Everything is perfect," I smiled. "In fact, I've never felt better." I played along for the rest of the night. I blew out the candles on the cake. I let my mother hug me. I let Mason hand me a cheap card. I watched them exchange secret, triumphant glances across the table. They thought they were masterminds. They didn't know that while I was sitting there eating dessert, I was secretly texting my private investigator and my real estate attorney under the table. Because here is the one thing my mother, my stepbrother, and my husband completely forgot. My father wasn't a fool, and neither was I. When my father died 10 years ago, he didn't leave the house directly to my mother. He left it in a revocable living trust, with me named as the sole trustee upon my 25th birthday. My mother had spent 10 years believing she owned the home because her name was on the old municipal tax records. But when I refinanced the house 3 years ago to pay off her debts, the bank required the property to be fully transferred into my legal entity times Clara Vance Management LLC. The papers my mother had stolen out of my briefcase weren't property transfer deeds for the house. They were corporate debt assumption agreements for my LLC's liabilities and personal liability waivers for the back taxes my mother still owed from her failed business. Not only did they not own the house, but the fraudulent notary Mason hired was about to submit forged signatures on documents that explicitly bound Times Mason and Linda Times to over $120,000 in commercial debt. While they were driving home early to change the locks on me, I didn't rush back. I took an Uber to a luxury hotel downtown, booked a suite, ordered room service, and waited for morning. At 8 a.m. the next day, Mason's fraudulent notary filed the forged paperwork at the county clerk's office. The moment the digital stamp hit the document, the trap snapped shut. At 9 a.m., my lawyer filed a formal suit for title fraud, identity theft, and corporate embezzlement, attaching the county's own freshly stamped records as Exhibit A. At 10 a.m., 3 police cruisers and a county sheriff arrived at my house. I arrived at the house at 10:30 a.m., wearing a tailored suit, accompanied by my attorney and 2 locksmiths. Julian, my mother, and Mason were standing on the front lawn in their pajamas. Mason was in handcuffs near the back of a police cruiser for executing a fraudulent notarization on county records. My mother was screaming at the sheriff, holding a piece of paper in her trembling hands. Julian saw my car pull up and sprinted over to the window, his face pale, eyes wild. "Clara! Clara! Tell them there's been a mistake!" he yelled, banging on my door. "The locksmiths wouldn't let us back inside. Your mom says there's something wrong with the title." I rolled down the window slowly, looking at him through my sunglasses. "There's no mistake, Julian," I said calmly. "You guys wanted to change the locks, remember? I just saved you the trouble." The color drained from his face so fast I thought he was going to faint right there on the driveway. You knew?" he whispered. "I heard every word at dinner," I replied. "Oh, and Julian? Your clothes are already packed. They're sitting in trash bags behind the garage, exactly where you put mine." My attorney stepped forward, handing Julian and my mother 2 formal eviction notices alongside divorce papers and criminal court summonses. My mother broke down, sobbing hysterically on the lawn, screaming that I was an heartless daughter, that family doesn't do this to each other. I got out of the car, walked up to her, and looked her dead in the eye. "Family doesn't lock a daughter out on her birthday to steal her house, Linda," I said quietly. "You forgot who actually paid for this roof. You forgot who held the trust. And most importantly, you forgot that I'm my father's daughter, not yours. It took 8 months to clear everything up in court. Mason accepted a plea deal for felony document fraud and received 2 years of probation along with massive financial restitution orders. Julian had to sign off on a clean divorce, relinquishing any claim to my assets, while his credit score plummeted after my lawyer forced him to pay back the joint funds he had stolen. My mother had to move into a tiny studio apartment on the other side of town, funded entirely by the small state pension she had left. As for me, I sold the house for twice what I bought it for, moved to a coastal city, and opened my own real estate advisory firm. Sometimes, the people who claim to love you are just waiting for you to turn your back so they can plunge the knife in. But when you stop playing the victim and start paying attention, you realize that toxic people always destroy themselves. All you have to do is let them think they're winning. If you enjoyed this story and believe that karma always finds its way home, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below. What would you have done if you caught your family plotting against you at your own birthday dinner? Thank you for watching, and remember, never let anyone make you feel like a guest in your own life. See you in the next story.